I mean, I can say it more directly. You weren't gifted, talented, or smart. You were just most likely, statistically speaking, an upper middle class white kid. And so your school district rewarded you by giving you the title of gifted. And then they use that as an excuse to pull resources from your Black and Indigenous, low income, disabled, neurodivergent peers and gave them to you. You benefited from the system of white supremacy and classism because you could uphold it as more likely than not an upper middle class or middle class white kid. You were the reason and the excuse for withholding resources from marginalized students, and you were complicit in accepting them. And I know you were a child, and I know you probably didn't have a lot to say, and you also didn't have a lot of perspective. But as an adult, if you're still holding on to this idea that you were a gifted kid once, when all that meant is that you could thrive under classism and white supremacy, unpack that.
The idea that being gifted and getting something based on purely your merit and your education has something to do with race is just so beyond me. But it's an effort to look at everything through that lens. And there's never been anybody to say, well, there's more gifted kids that are white than Black in most schools, although I'm sure there is, but that's more of a cultural problem than it is something that has to do with racism. Teachers don't go to teach to hold back Black kids and brown kids and Indigenous kids and neurodivergent kids. If anything, teachers are more sympathetic and work harder for kids who have special needs or who are disabled or neurodivergent, and they want to see those kids succeed. Everybody wants to see those kids succeed. So to think that by virtue of being gifted, that you are somehow contributing to white supremacy is ridiculous.
So what you're saying is poor kids can be just as smart as white kids?
Poor kids are just as smart as the white kids. We love that quote.
Well, there are also more white people. There's more white people.
Yes.
If there's more gifted white kids and there's more white people in America, then statistically speaking, yes, there's going to be more white gifted kids. Right. Obviously, she is not gifted to understand that.
No, and it's important to talk about math. What is so much more influential in education is socioeconomic status. And yes, there are problems for Black and brown children in school. I mean, I've been reading about this for a really long time. Expulsion rates are higher, detention rates are higher, dropout rates are higher. But that is more contributed to culture and socioeconomic status than it is to somebody being racist towards you. Teachers want to see you succeed. I can't imagine. I've never had a teacher in my life, and I've never met a teacher in my life that has ever been like, you know what, I wish that kid would just go absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, and it's objectively true that kids learn at different paces. Yes. And intelligence is a real thing that exists. And people, it's a spectrum, and people exist on different, independent of race, by the way. So to say that like everyone learns at the same pace is like a cookie cutter, that's ideological, and it is malpractice on the part of educators to take a cookie cutter approach to teaching kids. And by the way, if you're so worried about equity, like when you take one approach to everybody, then you're depriving students who are able to advance more quickly, even if that happens to be a Black or brown student. You're depriving them of the chance to advance as quickly as they could. And so, yeah, it's just a nonsensical argument.
There are two possible solutions to this perceived problem that she's put forth. One is an affirmative action stance where you put Black and brown children and neurodivergent children in a gifted program that they are not fit to be in, which obviously is horrible and not going to go well, and it's going to deteriorate their grades. Right. Or you cut off the gifted program, you cut off everybody at the knees, and you have gifted students who have a higher intellect, who are not being challenged in school, and you put them at risk of not doing well at school or even leaving the school system because they're not being challenged enough. So the two solutions to this perceived problems are not solutions at all.
And that's exactly what we see in places like Harvard and Yale, and where they have affirmative action programs. The students who are admitted on the basis of their skin color, who are underqualified relative to other students, are competing with students that are exceptionally qualified, and they lag behind in their class. They often transfer their majors. They often fail and have higher stress, and you're setting them up for failure through the affirmative action in the first place.
All I've been able to realize going and talking to, so many people, especially being now on my book tour and talking to so many, hundreds of students and everything. The number one thing that is indicative of someone who's going to be gifted or very well learned or whatever it might be is someone who reads. Reading is the number one thing in the entire world to know if someone is going to be very intelligent. Someone who doesn't put time into reading, which most people don't, you are not going to be that intelligent. Most people who are the smartest people in the world, especially when you're growing up and young and you're looking for activities to do, the kids who read a lot were gifted and talented. The kids who didn't read were not gifted and talented. Anyone who reads a lot is gifted and talented.
And there's so many different factors to it. It's reading comprehension, it's math comprehension, it's pattern recognition. I remember taking my gifted test and being surprised that it wasn't just straightforward like math questions and reading prompts. It was look at these sets of blocks and create a pattern out of them and see which one goes against it. Like there's so many different factors to just intellect that are measured by a gifted test that have nothing to do with race. But nonetheless, this girl is probably going to keep making TikToks about it, and we'll be able to debunk them over and over